good day, good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned. Hello, y'all, and welcome to You're Probably Right. I am your host, MCM, and we're back at it. Now, this is the part 2. Now, you might remember the last episode or not, but if you didn't, you might want to go back and listen to that one. It is called Different Types of Learners Transitioning from helpee to helper in special ed and beyond. Now, the whole point was I wanted to talk about the different types of learners, like autodidactic learners or just didactic learners, the whole gambit of different learners that I was speaking about in the last episode. But I was also talking about my experience as a kid that was in special ed growing up for most of my learning, I think up until grade 10. So I first spoke about, again, I said didactic learners, audiodidactic learners, pedagogical learners, learning styles like visual learners, auditory learners, and, the list goes on. I talked about that, but then I also tried to interject my opinion or my experience and my opinion into the scenario coming from someone who actually went through the school system in Ontario, in the public school system, and just my experience on all of that. So in this episode, which is for entertainment purposes only, I'm going to answer maybe 10 questions about surrounding the same subject, and hopefully I'll be able to draw in my own experience, because that's what I'm a professional on. I'm not a professor. I don't profess to be a professor of anything. This is not a Christian podcast, but it is a podcast by Christians. So therefore, most of what I have to say will be coming from that standpoint, if any. I don't rely heavily on scriptures, but when I do feel the need to add it to something, then I do. It's just that simple. So I just wanted to let you know exactly where I was coming from, or where I'm coming from when I do my podcast. Okay, so I'm going to start off the questions without any further ado. If I can just find them, they're all written down here somewhere. So just hang out a second. Let's see. Okay, so key points from the last episode, I guess, when it comes to me, I suppose, since I'm the one who's answering the questions. Let's see. My personal experience, I would say, yes, as I said, I'm grade 4 to grade 10. I was in special ed here and there, and it wasn't always like in a I'm not sure, because in different countries it's different. So basically what special ed looked like when I was growing up is that you would take most of your classes in class, like the regular class, and then they'd pull you out of, like, for me, and for instance, they pulled me out of French for most of my school years, and then had me go into this class where I could get more support with my language and my math. So that's pretty much what it looked like most of the time. And yeah, so that was my special ed experience. It wasn't that I was just in another class. I was still in the regular classes, but I was pulled out just to get some extra support. So if you wanted to know what special ed is, in my case, that's what it was like. So I was talking about, knowing what it is to be like a CYW now, as opposed to a student in it. I'm a person who's helping students who are in it. Although the special ed system is changing in Ontario, it has already kind of changed. And the way that it is changed is usually they have classes. They'll have like a primary, a junior, and an intermediate. And just as far as elementary school is concerned, SSEs, where basically a student center where there's a learning center where work it. I don't know why I'm fumbling over my words. Basically, they're classrooms where they will take students from, say, grade 1 to grade 3, I guess, who will need extra support. Then they'll take kids from grade 4 to 6, and then sometimes it'll be 6 to 7 and 8. It just depends. But basically, those will be classes where they can spend some time, as I did. But usually I'll do it during their language and during their math. So they usually pull them out during those periods and send them into the SSC, Student Support Center. And basically what it would do is help them in those classes that they are supposed to be in right now with the regular or the rest of their homeroom class, and supposedly catch them up. Now, I can honestly tell you, working in the system, I've seen very few times where students actually break out and get back into the regular classes. It's just because while they're learning the stuff that kids already learned, in most cases, the other kids are going forward and learning something else. And the more time out of the regular class, I believe it just pushes you back farther. That's just my experience and what I've seen in the education system. But for some students, it is definitely necessary that they get some type of support, but they are going away from that. They're actually leaving the plan is to leave kids in the regular system, and somehow the teacher who's already teaching a curriculum is supposed to scale it back for the other kids so that they can be included. Now, I understand from one point of view, and this isn't the point of this episode, but because I'm thinking of it now, I'm just talking about it. I understand what they're trying to say, so the kids don't feel excluded, so their learning experience isn't a lot different from the other students. They're trying to keep them in the class as much as possible. But what I see is those student support centers are still necessary, and I think they're going to have to scale it back. As I said, right now in 2024, they're going away from it, but I'm pretty sure they're going to have to revamp it. I think just taking them away, and they're slowly taking them away, but I just have a feeling that that's going to change. Anyhow, another key point. Let's see, challenges and strategies in working with children and youth with special needs. I didn't really talk about it that much because that's like I was talking about autism spectrum disorders or anything like, they used to call Asperger's or high functioning, low functioning autism, those things. I wasn't talking about that at all. It's just kids that have different learning styles. Mostly I was talking about. And I just went through my personal experience and abilities, and how sometimes you have an ability in a subject or in an area, but even though maybe you excel more than others at first, what ends up happening is you end up falling back to the pack because things get more complicated, things get faster, and it's still, whatever your disabilities in other ways can sometimes still show up in ways that you were, or in areas that you thought you had a strength in. So here's just some follow-up questions to the last episode. Hopefully you're interested. Sorry for mumbling and bumbling over this, but I'm not doing it over again. And I'm not perfect, but the one good thing that when listening to my podcast is it's actually me. It's not an AI voice version of me, because I bumble and stumble over words all of the time. And you know what? I'm fine with that. It's just me and you talking. It's not like there are 700,000 people listening to me. And even if there were, well, that's me, and I'm fine with that. Okay. So, first question. So, from the topic, I guess, from personal experience and professional impact. The question is, how did your personal experience as a student in special ed shape your approach as a child and youth worker? And I would say it's helped me to have more patience with students. I constantly, and hopefully not too often, I look back at how I felt when, say, I was told to write something down, and then maybe there was a teacher literally standing over me while I attempted to write, and they're reading what I'm writing. I had the feeling that they're watching how I was, making my R's and how my cursive was because I was writing. Whereas now a lot of the time the kids in those situations are on computers, which is a lot more helpful for them. But it was definitely nerve-wracking. So I try not to stand over students. I try to give, because I wasn't given the benefit of the doubt a lot of the time. And I try to respect the type of work or the ways that they like to work. Sometimes there's students who would like a little white noise or a little instrumental going on in the background while they use the computers in classes. Maybe that noise is better than the noise of all the different students being disruptive in the classes, if that's the kind of class that you're in. Just try to have patience and realizing, from my heart that I want these students to succeed. So whatever it takes within reason, I try to help with. And that's through my experience being in a class like that. So whereas I don't really work in a student support center, I work around the school where different students at different working levels and different exceptionalities, different struggles, different issues are trying to just work in a regular classroom. And I just try to support those students socially and emotionally. And sometimes I try to help them if I can understand what their work is. I try to help them with the work as well. Next question. What specific challenges did you face during your school years and how did you overcome them? Well, mine were mostly literally with the words on the page, and I had various issues. I wasn't very good at presenting information to people. Shocker, right? And that meant standing in front of the classroom, trying to do a presentation, because this is just the one issue, and this is my biggest from my whole life. And I mean, a lot of people struggle with public speaking, but my issue first is that either I didn't spend enough time working on my information, so then when I was going to try to approach sharing it with the class, either I didn't know my stuff, or let's say I had reading cards, which I very rarely had reading cards. I wasn't comfortable trying to, try to read my stuff while everybody's sitting there watching me read my stuff to present whatever. So it was a blockage there. That's the one thing, and that was just presentations. But definitely, like back in the day, I always had to handwrite everything. So one issue I had is that teachers, a lot of the time, they wanted you to write a rough draft and then go over it and then do an edited copy and then a good copy. And what issues that I would have, of course, is that I couldn't read my own handwriting. I would be there trying to get all the ideas, and my ideas were flowing so much in my brain that my hand, which apparently my wrist was weak or whatever. That's what one of the psychologists, I think, told me. So my handwriting was just horrible. It was like, if you've seen your doctor's writing, well, my handwriting was worse than that. So sometimes I would write out a page or two and then say I would come back, as I think it's a good idea for most people to come back the next day and try to edit it and almost look at it like if it's somebody else's work. And a lot of the time I couldn't read what the heck I wrote. So that would cause problems. And math, there were some concepts that I didn't get. But again, a lot of it, when I look back on my experience, it was the fact that there wasn't much support at home when it came time to do my work, nor did I want to do my work. So therefore, I just kept, you go grade 1, grade 2, when you didn't pay attention to your adding and subtracting, and then you get on to multiplication and division. And if you didn't work on these things at home, then you're having a harder time than the average person who has fully learned those top subjects. They can move on to fractions and decimals, and the list goes on. And you think about that in every course. Language, maybe you learned how to write small words and learn how to write sentences, but maybe you didn't pay attention when it was time for grammar and punctuation. And these things just compound themselves as you move through school, and you end up with learning gaps. So my biggest challenge, I would say, is, and still is learning gaps. From either not being interested in the work, not being dedicated to my work, not taking the work seriously, also not understanding it, and also having pretty rough teachers to the point where I was being cuffed in the back of my head or my ears were being pulled. So it's like, who wants to be there? Or literally being asked if I'm stupid in class in front of students. Not my father, not my brother, but actual teachers. So there was a lot of stuff that I dealt with that I believe, I don't think students deal with right now. But one thing I can tell you that overcame just the educational part of it when it comes to school was the fact of actually having a computer. And that was going on my second time in college. And I had a laptop and I was able, even though my organization skills weren't that great, even though I was pretty conscientious, and I'm a conscientious person by nature, my note-taking skills, even though I had the computer, weren't that great. So I would be putting files all over the place, and every once in a while I would get lucky and I would leave the right stuff in the right places, and then I would get A's. So that really changed for me, and that was later on. So I realized how important it is to help students with stuff like that, and realize that a lot of kids can excel, and thank God for computers when they're used properly. Okay, to education practice. Let's see. Can you discuss some of the most effective strategies you have found for supporting students with special education needs? Again, because I'm not really working in special ed, my most effective strategy, I think, is just having patience. Knowing that the computer is an amazing tool that we can sometimes dissect things a little bit better, or a little easier, break things down a little bit easier for students to be able to do their work. Maybe they need to do a book report. Maybe their reading isn't that great, whereas I had no choice but to read the stories. Now sometimes students have an opportunity that they can listen to the story on the computer. They can, when they're writing, they can literally listen to what they've written and see where they can fix and edit. And there's a whole bunch surrounding the computers. There's things that will break down a math question better than before. So for a person say like me, so when I see students who are like me and I know that they can be helped by, say, a computer, then these are the things that I offer them. But I'm telling you, mostly my main thing is just trying to have patience, because that's one thing I did not see or experience or afforded when I was a kid. How do you tailor your approach to different types of learners, such as didactic and autodidactic or pedagogical learners? Well, because I'm not the actual teacher, I do realize when students are better off left alone in a corner, in a carrel somewhere, with headphones on and white noise in their ears. They're just gonna work. And some kids, you had to give them structure. You had to give them time limits to work on certain things. Some kids will work something to death and not be able to space out the objectives, and they'll do one thing amazing, but then they'll leave out 4 different things. Some kids, you have to make sure that you give them a story that is right in their wheelhouse. Maybe it's a hockey player, and we know that the only way he's going to read a book is if he reads a book about Wayne Gretzky, or reads a book about Ovechkin or Mitch Marner, or whoever is new these days. There's just different ways of approaching and just trying to give them as much or as little support as they need and just hopefully just help them to go into the right direction of how they need their learning for each student, because every student is different. Even if you're in special ed, it doesn't mean you have dysgraphia. It doesn't mean you have dyslexia. It doesn't mean that you're slow. It might mean that you're just disorganized. It might mean different things. There's kids that are fine with work, but they come to school hungry. There's a whole bunch of things that affect students' learning. So we, from a holistic point of view, we try to see if we can speak to the needs of these children in a whole bunch of different ways now. Whereas before, it was just do your work, no matter what. How do you address emotional and psychological needs of students with learning disabilities? Um, just giving them as much support as possible. I mean, again, just because a student has, there's many different psychological needs. You know, there's many things that affect their psychological needs. There could be stuff going on at home. There could be sleeping issues. There could be, maybe is a kid stuck on computers all day, and maybe they don't do their work when they necessarily say they're doing their work, and then the fruits of their labor or lack thereof comes when the report comes, and then they say, I don't know why I got a D minus. There's students with the gaps that we try to fill, hopefully not holding them back from the learning that they're missing out, because I mean, if you don't know how to add and subtract, the chances are you're probably not going to be very good at multiplication and division. So it's trying to help them or pull them up, but at the same time not to allow them to be held back at the same time, which is a great balancing act. And just realizing that the students are people, and they need help, but they need respect as well. And knowing that students do have something to offer a classroom, as in our society, in a classroom's community or a school's community, and we try to find different ways where they can take part. Not necessarily dumbing things down for them, because kids know when you're dumbing things down for them. Kids know when you're treating them special because you don't think they can do as well. So again, there's a balancing act on where you open up opportunities, and at the same time there's ways where you have to allow students to get these opportunities by merit. I believe merit is way more important than just being given, because once you're just giving and getting free handouts, there's nothing in you that's going to say, I need to work harder. Okay. What role does emotional engagement play in the learning process for these students? And I think it plays a huge role. We're all human. There you go. If you're emotionally engaged, you're going to care. Once you care about the work that you're doing, you're going to work harder at it. You're going to probably succeed a lot more. If you just don't care at all, then the chances are it's going to show in your assignments, it's going to show in your tests. But when you care about the type of characters, maybe it's a reading assignment, maybe it's on Spider-Man for a little kid that likes Spider-Man, and it's a issue of a Spider-Man comic that they really care about, or whatever it is that they're interested in. Maybe they just like cats and you can find a book on Garfield the cat, like depending on the age, of course. But if you can get them emotionally engaged in what you're teaching them in some way, you got to know your student. I believe that the outcome can be, great. Let's see. Systemic and societal perspectives. What changes do you believe are necessary in education systems to do better in supporting students with special needs and different learning? Again, I think that student support centers need to stay open. Now, they have slowly closed down. So what we're finding is there's a lot of students in the buildings who are not really supported as often as they could be, or as often as they should be. I think there's some level of power out there that thinks that it's better for a student to flounder and be in classes with their peers, even if their learning, or their experience isn't as great. At least they don't look weird, I suppose. I mean, what's going to look weird? A student that had to step out of a classroom for 70 minutes a day, or a student who's constantly getting Fs because of one reason or another, because of the learning styles, because of deficiencies in learning, or holes or gaps in their education. I'm a strong believer that the SSC needs to be there. Maybe it needs to be a little bit more loosey-goosey. Maybe you can come back and forth. Maybe you can stay for the lesson, which, some students, I think they would allow to do, stay with the lesson, and then, bring that actual harder work or more difficult work to the SSC so the teacher could help them with it. And also, I think you need more support staff. Now, no student, I don't believe, and this is again from my experience, and I didn't have this, but I've had to do this for other kids where I've been in a role before as a special education as special educate special education assistant, where you literally walk from class to class with a student, even into gym. Maybe there's behaviors, and that's a big thing of what I do as well. But no kid wants an adult walking, at the age of 12 or 11, walking from class to class with them, helping them to behave, helping them with their work, while other kids have to just do it by themselves. Chances are you're at the back of the class because the special ed assistant also needs a chair. And, no kid wants to be singled out that way. But unfortunately, that seems like the direction that our special education is moving, where because they don't have the student support centers really open for all students, then there's going to have to be more EAs running around with kids and more CYWs running around with kids. I don't think they want that, and I can't see them wanting to hire many more special education assistants or educational assistants or more CYWs. It's still going to cost the school more money. I think they're going to have to fix this, even though they think that they fixed it. I think they're coming probably to a rude awakening when a lot of the students are not eligible or set on the right path for college and university later on. But I guess we're going to have the effects of that and what happened with students who were working online for an extended period of time. We're going to have a rude awakening, I believe, in probably about 3 or 4 years or less. And I'm saying this in 2024. So again, usually my podcast, I try to be as evergreen as possible. It might not work in this case, but I mean, the information that I have as a student in special ed is over 40 years old and it's still relevant today. So we'll see. I'm not going to talk about my goals because that's not what this is about. Let's see. We'll skip that. How have your experiences as both a student and professional influenced your personal philosophy on education and support? I would say it's it's affected my whole way of thinking, because I realize that students, so a student like me would need more time doing work at home and at school. A student like me would need something they call a CIA, claim computer, where they can work if they don't have one. Like, students need access to technology that can help them keep up with the rest of the students. A student who maybe has issues with keeping organized can, the right program or the right type of computer, right type of technology can literally keep notes in the right places for them, helping them to have something to study for a test, something that they can watch or read over and over or listen over and over, so that they can get that repetition. And there's just so many things that a computer would have done for a kid like me growing up. But of course, I think the Apple IIe, first Apple came out, that regular Apple computer came out when I was probably about I think 10 to 12. And back then you'd have like 3 computers and then you'd have a computer lab. But to get my own computer, I did buy a computer, I think, when I was probably about 13 or 14, but I never used it for homework. It was for video games, and the processors and stuff like that weren't that great back then. I think it was a Commodore 128 I had. But again, later on in college, I can honestly tell you that a laptop, a Chromebook, later on, really helped me, and work wasn't really that much of a problem. There was something that they developed called Dragon Naturally Speaking, that I could listen to documents as long as they were accessible online, and I could really know what was going on. So it really helped me. And I've just realized that you just need to deal with each student as an individual. And some students need more time. All students need to know that you, as a staff member in a school, care about them, not only the work that they can provide. Students need to know that they have something to offer, not just everything they come to school and they're just going to be taught everything because they're a blank slate. Kids come with a lot of understanding, a lot of feelings, emotions, issues. And I think you just have to try to educate and help the whole student and show them that you're emotionally invested in them. And once I believe that they think that you care, they feel that you care, they see that you care, you show that you care, I think it can make a big difference in their education. Let's see. Last question. Can you share a specific story where you made a significant impact on a student's life? There's a few different ones. But I would say, just keeping it nice and anonymous, I would just say I've helped a lot of students who were having difficulty dealing with other adults in the building, let's say. I've had to go and visit students who, kind of were sent to different programs at different locations, sometimes out of their home school, to get support for a time. I've gone and visited these students. I've tried to speak endlessly to students, which worked for some, about behavior. And students need to also realize that teachers are people too. And disrespect and inappropriate behavior is not tolerated by most. And even though some can look the other way in many situations, it's not in their best interest. So my greatest challenge, and it's helped in some, where I try to logically speak to students about their behavior, try to give them a bigger picture, and try to help them from a growth mindset standpoint, where I'm looking at what they're good at, who they are, what knowledge they have, what cultural significances that they have that can play a part in how we help to educate them, and just treat them with respect. So that's about it, y'all. Again, if you haven't watched you hadn't listened to the other episode, I strongly suggest that you go back and listen to part 1. And that's about it for today. Nice and short. You have fasted 32 minutes. All right, y'all. This is MCM, and you're listening to You're Probably Right. See you next time. Hey, come check out You're Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 dogs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.